Welcome, Commissioners, CDE staff, and members of the public watching remotely. I'm Lily Jarvis, the Chair of the Instructional Quality Commission. I call this meeting to order. Public comment on items on today's meeting agenda may be provided during the meeting either in person or by signing up on the sheet located at the back table or by dialing 667-770-1523 and then following the prompt to provide a participant access code. The access code is 651905. Callers will then be added to a queue. The operator will notify callers when it's their turn to provide public comment. If possible, we recommend members of the public dial in for public comment, continue to view the live stream of the meeting for a better understanding of the meeting's status. When it's your turn, please mute the live cast audio. When giving public comment, please state the following: the commenter's first and last name, the organization affiliation, if any, and then make your public comment. Again, the phone number is 667-770-1523. The access code is 651905. The phone number and access code will also be announced at the start of public comment for each item. This is also outlined on the September 2023 IQC agenda posted on the IQC webpage. Now I will introduce each commissioner participating in today's meeting. When I call your name, unmute your microphone and confirm your attendance. Then mute your microphone again. Commissioner Cristina Andre. Commissioner Mariana Astorga Almanza.
Present.
Commissioner Anita Friedman. Commissioner Lindsay Gotanda. Commissioner Charisse Guerra.
Present.
Commissioner Jennifer Hicks.
Present.
Commissioner Janet Lanning.
Present.
Commissioner Neil McGaffey.
Present.
Commissioner Alicia Regosa.
Present.
Commissioner Nikki Reina Guerra.
Present.
Commissioner Ku Vang.
Present.
Commissioner Marcy Winnower. Commissioner Kimberly Young.
Present.
Commissioner Erica Cepeda.
Present.
Student Commissioner Ethan Chen.
Present.
Assembly Member James Ramos. Senator Ben Allen. I'd like to take a moment to recognize that today is our student member Ethan Chen's first IQC meeting. Welcome, Ethan. Now I'd like to ask Commissioner Astorga Almanza to lead us in the salute to the flag.
Thank you. Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is item 1C, administration of the oath of office. We will now have the administration of the oath of office to our new student member. I will turn the meeting over to board member Glover Woods to swear Ethan in.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Jarvis. Commissioner Chen, would you please come forward? Okay, we're going to administer your oath of office. Are you ready? Okay, wonderful, wonderful. you would raise your right hand. I, Ethan Chen, do solemnly swear or affirm
I, Ethan Chen, do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely,
That I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, Commissioner Chen. Welcome to the Instructional Quality Commission.
Thank you. Ethan, would you like to say a few words?
I just wanted to say that I'm so honored and grateful to have this opportunity to serve with the rest of the IQC, and I'm excited for everything we're going to do for the rest of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. Welcome. Next is an overview of the agenda. The agenda today remains unchanged and includes the following: approval of the March 15th, 2023 IQC meeting minutes, approval of the proposed revised 2024 IQC meeting dates, and approval of the proposed revised guidance for local instructional materials adoptions. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. The public comment for this agenda is now open. Please follow the instructions on the screen if you would like to give public comment on the minutes. If you have the minutes, Commissioners, you have the minutes of the March 15th, 2023 IQC meeting before you. If you have substantive changes, please present them now. If there are minor changes not affecting the content, please email them to Denise Figueroa, IQC Liaison. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second the motion.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Guerra, and the motion has been seconded by Commissioner Vang. Is there any discussion of the motion? Is there any public comment on the motion?
There is no public comment.
The public comment line for this item is now closed. I now will call for a roll call. All in favor? All opposed? Is anyone abstaining from voting? The motion passes. Next is item 1F, my chair report. It's not much of a report, but a welcome. And I want to say good morning, commissioners. I hope that you're well, and happy new school year to you all. As the chair of this commission and a proud and unrelenting Latina, I'll take this opportunity to uplift and honor the rich cultures and contributions made by Hispanic and Latino Americans during Hispanic Heritage Month. It should be noted that although our agenda is very short today, there is a great sense of satisfaction knowing that since the last time we were together, a 4-year-long project was approved by the California Board of Education. The new mathematics framework, as you know, represents a significant step forward in mathematics education, and its implementation is poised to remove barriers to access. And that's why we're here. And with that, we will transition to our next item, 1G, the report of our Deputy Superintendent.
Good morning, everyone. So good to see you all today. Thank you for being here, coming back up to Sacramento. We have not talked since school returned, so I know in all of your important work, just glad that we are here. We're back with students. We appreciate all of your contributions. Congratulations to our newest commission member as well. I'm Cheryl Cotton, Deputy Superintendent of our Instruction, Measurement, and Administration branch here at the California Department of Education. And again, we welcome you. The meeting agenda for today continues our discussion on the revised guidelines for local instructional materials adoptions and textbook piloting information. As you know, my colleagues in the Curriculum Frameworks and Instructional Resources Division work to facilitate the state-level adoption of materials, of instructional materials, the recommendations of which you see and recommend to the State Board of Education. Yet, adoption of instructional programs and curricula in the state of California remains decisions of the staff and governing boards of local education agencies. In fact, the law is clear in stating that the LEAs, which are school districts, charter schools, and county offices of education, are not required to purchase from the list of state-adopted instructional materials. Though the state-level adoption process determines whether a publisher's or content developer's program has fully addressed all grade-level content standards as well as the other evaluation criteria. It's not an endorsement of a particular program, and LEAs are able to select materials from various publishers as they deem necessary. This is just kind of those guardrails around the work that we're doing and the work that you are set to do today. To support these decisions, should an LEA seek to use an SBE adopted program, you'll be discussing the final revised version of a tool that can ensure LEAs select, implement, and utilizes materials that are comprehensive and rigorous. Some important aspects from this discussion. 1, the document provides timelines, templates, and suggestions to ensure that local adoptions are done with transparency and in compliance with state law. 2, it emphasizes how these decisions relate to the larger process of implementation, including professional learning, feedback systems, progress monitoring, and assessments of student progress are considerations for an implementation plan. 3, the guidance focuses on the expertise and feedback of classroom teachers. And 4, it also includes a number of optional tools that LEA staff can use to train reviewers on the considerations that matter most in order to maximize reviewers' use of time. They also encourage discussion to support decision-making. Your input, commissioners, provides a set of parameters for LEAs to conduct a thoughtful adopting, piloting, and eventual implementation of materials and resources. A decision that educators understand the new materials and shifts in pedagogy and feel prepared to begin using the new curriculum to its fullest and best capacity. I look forward to this discussion, and with that, I thank you again for your work here today and turn things back to Chair Jarvis.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Cotton. Next is item 1H, the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you so much, Chair Jarvis. And greetings, Commissioners, State Board of Education Liaisons, Glover Woods and Lewis, Deputy Superintendent Cotton, Seaford, and CDE staff, and all of those members who are joining us publicly today. I believe that it continues to be important to acknowledge this land that we're meeting on today and our great state of California in an effort to recognize California's first peoples and the original caretakers of this land. The California Department of Education headquarters, where we are today, is Nisenan land. I have some Seaford-related updates for you since we last met. We last met in March. In order to better align with the work of our division and with the timing of our vacancy that I mentioned back in March of our clearinghouse for specialized media and technology management position, it was time to reorganize ourselves. The former Curriculum Frameworks unit has been expanded to include more content area expertise and has been renamed the Standards and Curricular Guidance Unit. This unit is now led by Dr. Jennifer Bentley, who you'll hear from today. Our former CSMT and Instructional Resources units have been merged into a larger unit called the Instructional Materials and Access Unit, and that's led by Dr. Marla Clayton-Johnson, who is also here in our audience today. Lastly, a new unit was formed in response to these new projects that we've been receiving through legislation that are not necessarily a curriculum framework or an instructional resources adoption. This new office is called the Curricular Initiatives Unit, and it's led by our newest administrator, Dr. Jenna Polhumus. She's also here today in our audience. We've also added some new expertise in our division with the onboarding of Loy Linebarger IV and Kara Lack, who are also here in our audience listening in. And they, coming to us, add preschool, elementary education, and special education experience to our ranks. As for projects, I want to recognize Vice Chair Lindsay Gatanda, who unfortunately is not here today, for traveling to the State Board of Education meeting in July to speak on behalf of the mathematics framework. She did a phenomenal job of sharing her experiences and mathematics expertise, which resulted in the adoption of the mathematics framework. The framework is a work of countless individuals, as Chair Jarvis mentioned, and could not have been completed without the dedicated work of this commission, including former commissioners dating all the way back to 2019. We now set our eyes on an instructional materials adoption for mathematics, which this commission will most likely begin starting in your November meeting, fingers crossed. I'm so very excited to get the ball rolling and involve this commission in this very important next step in the provision of high-quality mathematics instruction to the students of California. Lastly, while we're talking about high-quality instructional materials, I'm looking forward to the discussion you'll have today around the guidance for local instructional materials adoptions, as Deputy Cotton mentioned. This is much-needed guidance considering there are school districts who can use this to consider materials for multiple content areas, including health education, ethnic studies, and English language arts. As you embark on the discussion later this morning, I want to remind you that you're here as a representative for the education community and your constituencies. You're the advisory board to the State Board of Education, and you are the experts in the field of education. Thank you for fulfilling that role to make sure that the Commission is recommending the best guidance product possible to the State Board of Education. This concludes my report. Thank you, and I pass the meeting back to you, Chair Jarvis.
Thank you, Executive Director Torres. Next is item 1I, the report from the State Board of Education.
Well, good morning again, Commissioners. So good to see all of you. I am standing here at the podium because I just can't see everyone's smiling face from the seat where I am. And I just thank you all so much for traveling for this very important meeting, as is every meeting of the IQC. And again, welcome, Commissioner Chen. Just wonderful to have you as part of this work. I will formally introduce myself, Cynthia Glover Woods, Vice President of the State Board of Education, and I'm pleased to have along with me the other liaison from our State Board of Education, member Brenda Lewis, who you'll hear from in just a few moments. Just wanted to let you know that the State Board of Education is continuing to work diligently and in partnership, of course, with your guidance and advisement, as well as under the guidance of our State Board President, Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond, and all of our educational partners as we continue to craft and really move forward the instruction and education that all of the students in California need and want and desire. So we're just very pleased to be able to be with you here this morning. Your work to advise the board on instructional guidance is invaluable. And Commissioner Jarvis, Chair Jarvis, as well as Executive Director Torres, and even Deputy Superintendent Cotton spoke to the math framework that was just passed by the State Board of Education in July. That work was able to be done because of the work of this very important commission. And I thank all of you who have had a voice and a part, whether formally on the commission at the time or as a member of the field. Thank you so very much for that. I would like now to turn it over to Member Lewis to update you on just a few things that happened just last week. I'm sure you guys were like posted to your computers, leaned in for the State Board of Education meeting. We had one very full day, robust of conversation and a lot of very important information for the students in California. And Member Lewis is going to share a couple of those highlights, and I'll close out with some final highlights.
Thank you, Member Glover Woods, and good morning, everyone. So for the first part of our recap of our September 13th meeting, we heard the following items which would be of interest to you as the IQC. The CDE presented their proposed revisions to the Local Control Accountability Plan, the LCAP, which is a 3-year plan that describes the goals, the actions, services, and expenditures to support positive student outcomes that address state and local priorities. They also presented proposed updates to the annual template and instructions to incorporate the requirements outlined in Senate Bill 114, which made changes to the Education Code relating to the LCAP. The CDE also recommended that the SBE take additional action as deemed necessary and appropriate. We anticipate seeing the final draft presented to the SBE for approval at our November meeting. No board action was taken at this time. The CDE also presented an item requesting approval for the proposed 2023-24 student score reports for the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, the CASP, and the English Language Proficiency Assessments, the LPAC. The item provided a summary of developments and updates related to the CASP and the LPAC, including outreach and professional development activities that extended from July through August 2023. We also heard an update on the national and international assessments, and the board approved the draft scores and the CDE we approved the draft score reports, and the CDE will move forward to work with ETS to begin the redesign. And I will turn over the rest of the report back to Member Glover Woods.
Thank you, Member Lewis. And so the final highlight for you, again, on that exciting meeting, if you missed it, go back and watch it. Who needs to live stream anything on Netflix or Hulu when you can watch the State Board of Education meeting? I'm just saying. So finally, we did also have some conversation and do some work related to the 2023 dashboard work plan. Some of you may be aware that every year there are certain areas that are looked at, certain things that are discussed to continue along that philosophical cornerstone of continuous improvement for our accountability system. And in the 2023 dashboard work plan and ESSA amendments that were discussed at the meeting, the following were requested to be approved. Changes to the cut points for the LPR English Learner Progress Indicator on the 2023 dashboard, as well as the reestablishment of that 5x5 grid for the English Learner Progress Indicator, also known as the LP. These are two things that you will see as the dashboard is released this winter. Also included in the LP will be the summative alternative LPAC as well. So we're really looking forward to the data that we will see in that English Learner Progress Indicator, the English Learner Progress Indicator as we move forward. Also determined was to remove the non-registered pre-apprenticeship measure from the College Career Indicator beginning with this school year. As some of you may know, there was opportunity for registered pre-apprenticeship programs as well as non-registered. The decision was made to remove at this time the non-registered pre-apprenticeship programs from the the College Career Indicator. Also, eligibility criteria for the differentiated assistance based on the 2023 dashboard was discussed. objective criteria for the 2021-22 teacher assignment outcomes within Priority 1, and one part that I'm very excited about everything that deals with the dashboard, of course, but very excited that there's going to be opportunity now for educators and educational partners to do deeper dives when they're in the dashboard, not solely looking at the indicator and the data that is on the surface of the actual dashboard, but to be able to access links to get into more data, more detailed data related to them. So links to additional data outside of the dashboard will be included for chronic absenteeism, the science assessment, and the least restrictive environment data. Lastly, the State Board of Education approved the amendments to the state plan, pending all of the things that need to happen as far as looking at the final revisions, making sure that typographical errors and those things are handled before submitted. And the board did approve, again, all of those recommendations from CDE related to the 2023 dashboard. So that concludes the report from the State Board of Education. Thank you so much for your I would say, your grace in listening to what has happened and some of the highlights. And again, looking forward to a very wonderful and robust meeting this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for those updates, board members. I just have one word to say. Wow, you have been busy, and so has the CDE. Next is item 1J, approval of the proposed revised 2024 IQC meeting dates. Public comment for this agenda item is now open. Please follow the instructions on the screen if you would like to speak. I will now turn it over to Executive Director Torres.
Thank you again, Chair Jarvis. So as you know, the IQC has approved meeting dates well through the end of the 2024 calendar year. I'm sure you've saved all of those dates, very important. Ultimately, the goal is to better prepare commissioners for their travel schedules as it relates to the anticipated work of the commission. As you recall, there were meetings anticipated this year in July and August, and both of which were canceled. Those dates were originally selected in anticipation of mathematics instructional materials adoptions related activities, but no one could have guessed the delays that ensued with the development of the mathematics framework, both related to COVID and the large amount of public comment that we had received. So speaking of 2024, we also try to anticipate when there may be conflicting meetings, notably conflicts with the State Board of Education meeting. And it recently came to our attention that the previously scheduled January IQC meeting that was to be held on the 17th and 18th of January coincided with the State Board of Education meeting. So subsequently, you have a proposed change to the 2024 meeting dates that move the January IQC meeting to the following week to occur January 24th and 25th. This proposed change in your January meeting is being made for your consideration and action. I'm going to pass things back over to Chair Jarvis.
Thank you, Executive Director Torres. Is there any discussion? Can I have a motion to approve the proposed revised 2024 IQC meeting dates?
I so move to approve the proposed revised 2024 IQC meeting dates as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
Commissioner Young has moved, and the motion has been seconded by Commissioner Reina Guerra. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
The public comment line for this item is now closed. I now call for a vote. All in favor? I think that's all of us. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Next is item 1K, approval of the proposed revised guidance for local instructional materials adoptions. Public comment for this agenda item is now open. Please follow the instructions on the screen if you would like to speak. I will now turn it over to Jennifer Bentley, Education Administrator.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Bentley. I am the Education Administrator for the Standards and Curricular Guidance Unit within CFERD. As a quick background reminder, this is an update of a document that was created for the State Board in 1998 originally, and consisted mostly of guidance around education code and regulations. So this update has been undertaken to make this document more effective and useful for the field, while simultaneously staying within the boundaries of local control requirements. So now I would like to introduce the people who are actually doing the important work, Michelle Fennell and Alejandro Hernandez. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Alejandro Hernandez, and this is Michelle Fennell.
Good morning.
Are we going to show the PowerPoint? I think we're ready. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the document that Michelle and I have been working on, and to which you, as members of the Instructional Quality Commission, have provided input. A few months ago, Ms. Fennell and I were tasked with updating a document that was first created in 1989, as Jennifer mentioned. This document has played a key role in informing California educators about California legislation and regulations concerning instructional materials. What you see on the screen is an excerpt that we wanted to show you because it illustrates that this document, called the Guidelines for Piloting Textbooks and Instructional Materials, was developed in 1989 and has been updated periodically. As you can see, it was revised in June 1995, September 2001, and the last time it was updated was 2015. The Guidelines for Piloting Textbooks and Instructional Materials document has been valuable because the recommendations have held up over time. These include suggestions for determining what instructional materials to pilot, piloting processes, as well as additional considerations that reflect best practices. Because these suggestions are sound, this document has been referenced in most, if not all, content-specific instructional materials toolkits developed by the California County Superintendents, formerly known as the California County Superintendents Educational Services Association, or CSESA. Unfortunately, several key resources the document cited are no longer available. One example, a standout example, is the Toolkit for Evaluating Alignment of Instructional and Assessment Materials, which was developed by Achieve, the Council of Chief State School Officers, among other organizations. Shannon?
Thank you, Alejandro. So during your March IQC meeting, you were able to take a moment to look at that document and review it. And in response to your comments and recommendations, we have provided some updates. At that meeting, it was decided that we wanted to keep the original intent of the document and that there was a lot of good work within that document, keeping the references to legislation and regulations and guidance, also keeping any current hyperlinks to county or to California Department of Education websites. So we have those still included. And then we included many of your updates that you recommended in this new document, and we're going to highlight a few of those. It's not an extensive list. The document is fairly lengthy, but we wanted to highlight some of those updates that we included from your recommendations. The introduction was revised. We revised that introduction so that readers understood the scope of the document and the original intent. So you'll see the introduction is much longer. Throughout the document, we added tools for capturing findings and facilitating that decision-making process. So you'll see those in charts and graphs throughout the document. We also addressed, which was very important, family and community engagement, as well as student voice. And included in that document is language regarding the importance of these voices, as well as guidance on how to include them within the process. You'll also notice that there are surveys included that have questions that can be used during the process. We also updated English learner guidance, including links to the English learner roadmap, as well as highlighting integrated and designated ELD and its importance within the entire adoption process. We updated social content standards guidance and included links to resources for that guidance. And we also included many additional resources that were recommended by you, the Commission, both throughout the document and in the appendix and resources section. These resources include, but are not limited to, Universal Pre-Kindergarten, the EL Roadmap Teacher Toolkits, Model Curriculum Projects, Ed Reports, and the Global California 2030 Initiative. So those are just some of the resources that you recommended.
In addition to the recommendations that IQC members made, Seaford staff also made some additional revisions. For example, the title of the document has been changed from Guidelines to Piloting Textbooks and Instructional Materials to Guidance for Local Instructional Materials Adoptions. The entire document was reorganized both for clarity, readability, and for accessibility, 508 compliance. We'll be highlighting some of these areas a little later. The links to all the subject matter toolkits have been included. We included an overview and a suggested timeline for the process. And we also added some support for the decision-making process itself, including reaching consensus as well as, excuse me, as well as guidance for implementation and reviewers, after reviewers make decisions, which includes publisher considerations, professional development, and progress monitoring. At this point, I'm so sorry. I'm okay. Thanks. At this point, we would like to provide a general overview of the organization of the document. In this slide and the next one, we're going to highlight the major sections of the draft document. In the introduction, we established an overarching purpose, the scope, and the intended audience for this document. In the identifying instructional materials section, we provide an overview of the standards-aligned instructional materials that are currently available for consideration. The overarching goal of the reviewing instructional materials section is to suggest activities for reviewers to verify that materials under consideration fully align with the related content standards, as well as to the guidance in the related curriculum framework. Naturally, additional considerations come into play, such as local priorities and teacher input.
Continuing with the table of contents, you enter the section about piloting instructional materials. And in this section, we include suggested proven practices both before, during, and after the piloting process, otherwise known as the field test, and also included guidance that is new on reaching consensus in that process, in that decision-making process. There is a section entitled Implementing of Instructional Materials. In this section, we outline publisher and content developer considerations, as well as including an implementation plan in your process to ensure a smooth transition into the new curriculum. The resources section, as mentioned before, contains many resource documents and links that were recommended as general guidance for adoption of curricular materials. And the appendix contains all of the tools that were added throughout the document in an editable and customizable format so that LEAs can use them and fill them out as they do their reviews of the curriculum.
So we're nearing the conclusion. So some highlights. We've already mentioned that the California County Superintendents and several of its subcommittees have developed subject-specific instructional materials adoption toolkits. Also, there's a resource titled Selection of Non-SBE Adopted K-12 Instructional Materials, Process, Resources, and Tools, which provides guidance to LEAs considering the adoption of instructional materials the State Board of Education has not reviewed or adopted. And this resource, very important, lots of people don't know about this. This document includes a decision tree designed to clarify crucial decision points. The decision tree may be useful when LEAs are considering materials for grades 9 through 12 or curricula not submitted for SBE review. During the official SBE instructional materials review process, teachers and content experts ensure that the content in instructional materials is fully aligned to the content standards. A second benefit of selecting SBE instructional materials is that specialized formats are available at no additional cost to LEAs. Specialized formats include Braille, large print, audio recordings, digital talking books, and electronic files that are free for teachers and other educators to order or download through the Clearinghouse for Specialized Media and Technology. Finally, one of our goals was to keep this document focused on essential information. To maintain its brevity and readability, wherever we included tools to capture data to make decisions, we included excerpts. However, we included full editable versions of those tools in the appendix. What you see on the screen are the most significant events associated with this project. In March, Curriculum Frameworks and Instructional Resources Division staff it's not nerves. I don't know what this is. Curriculum Frameworks and Instructional Resources Division staff completed this draft of the guidance document, adding the suggestions provided by the IQC. I apologize. We are here now at the September IQC meeting for your review and recommendation to the SBE. With your recommendation, the document will be updated with any final edits you may have and sent to the State Board of Education for further review and potential adoption. So that brings us to your decision of the Guidance for Local Instructional Materials Adoptions document. Michelle and I are going to take notes on any edits you may have before recommending this document to the State Board of Education. So I'm going to go sit and take notes.
Thank you, Alejandro and Michelle. Just want to say thank you so much for listening to the IQC's recommendations at our previous meeting. I see process and coherence running through the revised document. Now I'd like to open it up for discussion from our IQC members.
I'm worried that this is a silly question, but under the subject matter toolkits, I don't see a math toolkit. Is there a reason for that? Under the subject matter toolkits on page 5, I see the other contents, but I don't see a math toolkit.
Mathematics toolkit hasn't been developed yet. The framework was just adopted in July.
Will there be an opportunity to include it in the document once it's been developed?
It would require going before. I'm not sure what the rules around editing something that's been already adopted by the state board are, but if possible, definitely. Or it will be the link will be on the CDE website.
First, thank you, Michelle and Alejandro and all of the staff. I know there were significant revisions that needed to go into this document, so we appreciate all of your work. And I think in light of AB 1078 being in the process of going to the governor's desk, I think that this is especially timely to have this updated guidance. I also really appreciated seeing the references to the social content standards throughout the document. I think that's something that a lot of LEAs are really taking into consideration right now. I have a few general questions for consideration and then some suggestions to share as well. So first for my questions, what was the education partner engagement between March when we saw the old draft and now? And what opportunities did our education partners have to give feedback and recommendations? And specifically, did CDE work with the California County Superintendents or CSBA or any of the other ed partners that we typically collaborate with on a document such as this? Another question, what is the guidance for courses that have standards but no framework? So for example, ethnic studies, computer science, those. And then finally, and Jennifer, you addressed this a bit, how will this document be updated with a document that's so full of links and a constantly changing scope? Is there an opportunity to make those updates without going through a formal review process every time? A couple of general suggestions. Can
I address your questions before I forget them? Okay, thank you. So answering your last question first, we do have an annual review process where we go through and check every link to make sure that it is still active, and if it isn't, we find a link to replace it. And if that's not possible, then we remove the link from the document. So there is a process already in place for making sure that links don't disappear. As to your middle question, which was one more time?
Middle question was guidance for courses that don't have a framework.
Right, so that we didn't include guidance on those in our instructional materials piloting guidelines because they're, if there's, usually those don't have an adoption process with around them. But there is the document in there that Alejandro mentioned about adopting materials for content areas that have not been through the process of materials adoptions, and there's no SBE adopted list. So we do have the guidance there within the document. And then the first question, I think, was, did we engage outside partners? To my knowledge, no. We were waiting for the public comment process to come in so that we could then hear from outside partners. In fact, we've already received public comment from a couple of outside groups, and that we are very excited to integrate into the document before it goes to the state board.
Thank you. A couple of general suggestions. While the social content standards were referenced, I think there is an opportunity to be consistent with those references throughout the document so that it's really clear for our LEAs when they're required and when they're not required. Another comment, parental involvement, as we all know, is something that many LEAs across the state are really navigating and discussing right now. Could we consider including some specific guidance on parent and community involvement? For example, specifically during the pilot process, how do we really get that deep parental engagement during the process and include some examples of best practices for what that might look like? It would be great to also see some stronger connections and references to the frameworks throughout the document, as those should really guide much of this work. I think stronger, consistent references to EdCode would also be helpful. While this document is guidance, within the document, it should be really clear for our LEAs what is a must-do and what is a may-do based on EdCode. And then finally, changing some terms like districts to LEAs, as this document I think will be incredibly useful for county offices, charters, beyond just the scope of districts. Also wondering if there's the possibility of delineating the role of a pilot committee versus an instructional materials adoption committee, because that instructional materials adoption committee is a much broader scope and more inclusive of things like parents and community involvement. Looking at the timeline guidance, in light of 1078, how long does an LEA really have to adopt instructional materials? And do they have a grace period of using materials that are no longer aligned? And maybe just some clarity around that, because I know we're already getting lots of questions from the field around that. And then I have a whole list of specific suggestions by page. So do you want me to?
Can we have you send those to Denise, or do you want to go through them? It's totally up to you.
There are a few I'd like to highlight, if that's okay.
So are we able to just pause for a moment to ensure that Michelle and Alejandro have captured all of the things around social justice, parental involvement, connections to frameworks and EdCode, changes to terminology from districts to LEA, and all of the other things, to make sure that you have an opportunity to.
And I'm happy to share my notes with you guys also, if that's helpful.
We are taking copious notes, and also a recording will be available. So we'll be able to highlight all of your great comments, but we're writing as fast as we can too.
I do just want to point out that AB 1078 is very new and was passed way before, or way after, excuse me, the document was done. So during this period of editing, taking your edits, we're also going to see what about AB 1078 we can include.
Perfect. Okay, any discussion from the committee before she moves on?
Or Jennifer continues with hers, or before?
Yeah, so before she moves on with her specific details of changes.
We can wait.
Okay. All right, Jennifer, continue, please.
Okay, I'll just highlight a few and then I'll send you guys the rest. On page 5, consider adding the LA County Office of Education's Ethnic Studies Instructional Materials Adoption Toolkit, and then also the World Languages Toolkit. Looking at page 7 under the Reviewing Instructional Materials pilot, I think this is an area where there would be an opportunity to again reference those social content standards in that specific section. On that page as well, under significant events, I'd recommend or wonder if we could remove the time frame suggestions. I don't know how realistic those are. Typically, an adoption process takes a lot longer than 2 months. So kind of, maybe giving bumpers rather than, a specific timeline. Let's see.
Commissioner Hicks, can you tell us what page you're referencing?
That was page 7. Yes.
Thank you.
On page 10, the header says non-SBDE adopted curricula, and just would recommend changing that to instructional materials for consistency, since curricula wasn't used throughout the document. On page 14, similarly, it references student subgroups in the header, and I think all of our terminology has changed to student groups, so being consistent with what we use on the dashboard in our accountability system. Let's see. On page 25, providing suggestions for how you would elicit feedback in developmentally appropriate ways from the elementary grades. So I thought that the survey questions were great, but also thinking about the span of students that we're eliciting feedback from. I referenced this earlier, but page 27, while there is a pilot committee or group, what's the role of an instructional materials adoption committee that's really inclusive of those parents and community partners? And then final suggestion, page 30. The implementation of instructional materials, a wondering is, could or should that be rephrased to something closer to initial implementation or launch? Because I think if we were to really look at high quality instructional materials implementation, you could write a whole nother guidance document on that. So is maybe something that's really focused on initial implementation might be more appropriate. So just a couple final comments. As I mentioned, I think that this is especially important right now, as Jennifer mentioned, with what has happened in the last couple of weeks, literally. But it might be an opportunity for us as a commission to slow down just a little bit on approving this document and make sure that it's really comprehensive and responsive to the current needs in the field. And I know that this agenda item was on the March IQC meeting, and we were able to provide feedback and appreciate that. But that was the older version, so now having this very comprehensive version, I think is just an opportunity for us to take a little bit more time with it.
Any questions or clarifications for Commissioner Hicks? Thank you, Commissioner Hicks. Okay. Commissioner Guerra?
Just going back to, I've gone through the adoption process in a district before, even though it's been quite some time since we've done that. But one of the things that I really found valuable, and I'm not sure if it's on page 7 in the chart, is I really feel like there needs to be another step. It could be in preparation, or it could be between preparation and identification, but really something around digging deep into all of these resources around the framework and additional, basically professional learning to get ready to get into these documents. Because one of the things that I found is that teachers really don't have a lot of time to spend in these documents, and so you really need a space somewhere where people can really get into some of these guiding documents, whether it's the framework and really digging deep, or some of these awesome resources that we have in here, because there may not be a familiarity. So really like a step around like building your own capacity to actually get into the work and be knowledgeable in the work. I found that really helpful. The other thing is on page 24, it's kind of that questions.
Hang on one second. Alejandro has a question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, first of all, Dr. Torres and Ms. Bentley, Dr. Bentley, if it's appropriate to request notes or just a sketch of an idea to make sure that what we write in response, what we include in response, aligns with your expectations.
Yeah, for sure. I can send that. On page 24, the questions are amazing, but there's kind of a more baseline question that I found missing, and that is something like, is it aligned to the standards? Because one of the things that we found in lots of instructional materials is it says it's a standard, but once you really dig deep into the standard and you look at the lesson that's actually there, it doesn't align. So that's almost the first question is like, does this lesson even align to the standards? And so it seems like an obvious, but having it in there would be amazing. And I have a clarifying question about some of the documents that our partners provided in public comment. Is it an assumption that those are going to be put in, or do we need to talk about those individually? I don't know about that. But one of the ones that I did notice was missing was, let me see, I have it in my notes, guidelines for students with disabilities and English learners, I believe is the title. So adding that as well. So I can send the full title of the document and the link. So those were the questions I had. And then the question I had about other recommendations from partners.
So I'm not sure if the letters were included in your folder. The emails that were sent to Denise were included in your folder, and that was the public comment that I was speaking about that we've received. You are more than welcome to discuss what you like and think should be included from those letters, and then it'll also be a discussion amongst us.
Any questions for clarifications to Commissioner Guerra from Alejandro or Michelle? You're good? Okay. I'd like to consider pulling the image of the decision tree that is referenced in a document that's linked. Are we able to pull the visual image of the decision tree and embed it into this document?
I think we discussed that briefly. It would not be accessible, just capturing the image. Is it possible to include? Yes. We would need to do some background work to make sure that it's accessible.
Yeah, I know it was linked. It was linked and then referenced, and then you open the document, and there it is. And it's such a visual in a beautiful way to really explain how to do this that I think it might be a missed opportunity if it's not, a table or something that's referenced in this document.
Right. So we can more seriously consider incorporating the image itself. I would need to find out how we can do that.
Thank you.
I think the document that Commissioner Guerra was referring to, I also noted that as well, is improving education for multilingual and English learners, students, bringing research to practice. That's a CDE document. I would also recommend that we add that dyslexia guidelines to that as well, just because I felt like after our last, meeting with our recommendations, I do see that we have more content around our English learners and multilingual learners. However, there's still a group of students that are missing, and those are our students with special needs. It's referenced throughout a little bit here and there in the document, but I was looking at it through that lens, and I think if we can add some additional resources there as well. So those are the two that I would recommend. But if we can, I'm looking at the section, I believe it's on the students' subgroups, but we will be changing that heading. I think adding more text to support our students with special needs as well. Yeah.
On page 10, I'm wondering if there's a way to really have this key question kind of stand out on that page a little bit more. I feel like it's so essential. It's just, to what extent are these instructional materials aligned to the current content standards? And I appreciate that it's in quotations, but I'm wondering if there's any way to kind of pull the reader's eye to that question, because that is really the question that kind of just is absolutely essential throughout the entire process.
I do have another thought here. On the table, the timeline or the suggested overview of the local adoption process on page 7, that table. In the preparation, I feel like there needs to be, how do we recruit the team? I feel like that's missing, and that's directly connected to what Commissioner Guerra had mentioned earlier. How do we recruit and make sure that all of the people that are participating in this adoption process are they are well represented, basically. So we want to make sure that we ensure that, and in addition to providing them the trainings and resources that will need to prepare them for this great work that they're going to do, because the decisions that they're making, it's going to impact the students in their districts. And so I think it's critical that we train them well. I have participated in a couple of different, adoptions and reviewed many ELA curriculums, and so I know the process. Just even more guidance around the standards map, I think that is taken for granted. I've gone through that, and many times I would even question myself, and I do know the standards myself, so I think some guidance there will also help with that.
Do you have a specific kind of guidance you would like us to include for the standards maps?
I think for some kind of model, or at least showing how to look for the standards in the curriculums, and then because I see the templates there, but I think the act of actually doing it is a totally different thing. And so Sometimes because the way the standards are written, they're really big. And so if it's partial, it's only part of the standards that is being addressed. But if we want to look at it, if it's fully addressed, what does that look like? So I think there, like a model or an example, I think might be helpful in that.
Thank you.
Just piggybacking on multiple comments today, one of the things I noticed with the templates is I think it would be great to have a little bit more guidance on the templates to what the criteria or what the priorities might be, because I think, like, I'm looking at page 39 for how instructional programs support student subgroups, and having gone through an adoption process before, without guidance, this can be very simple, too simplistic for what our students need. And so I'm wondering if somehow there could be some guidance attached to, you might be looking at kind of what the lessons involve, but you might also want to see, is it easy to navigate for teachers who are wanting to support their English language learners, or supports for students with disabilities. So that just seems a little bit open to me without guidance right there. I saw some throughout the package, but I would love to see something like that there.
You'll have the guidance both in the document and then also in the template.
Even if it's the same, I mean, I see the roadmap in there, but even that, you're translating the roadmap into how it would fit in a template such as this.
I'd like to add on to that, Commissioner Reina Guerra. So it says ratings how instructional programs support student subgroups. I'd really like further one to be a ratings sheet on integrated ELD specifically, because integrated ELD should be connected to all content areas. And so having a specific integrated ELD template, I think, is critical for our English learners, because regardless of where they're at, they should be getting integrated ELD in their content area.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the template? So something that reviewers would look at as they're reading the program and check off, oh, I see integrated ELD here, or what?
Yes. So, yes, exactly. So maybe, there's integrated ELD in relation to vocabulary development, or specifically around access to content, or differentiated instruction for different levels of English learners. So things like that, that should be embedded into a curriculum, regardless of content.
I just conferred with Michelle, and we think we understand. It would be helpful if you provided us just a little sketch or just an outline of what you would like to see.
Alejandro, you're giving me a lot of homework.
We have a lot of homework too.
But I got you. I got you.
Being responsive.
Thank you.
I do have a question about that, though. So I can come up with a sketch, but I know that there's rules around how we communicate with each other, because I feel like there's so many experts in the room who could actually support the thinking around that, but I don't know how we do that in this space, right?
I am not the expert in the IQC bylaws, Mike.
That's a great question. I would defer to Denise or Susan, but I believe they can submit, because we're asking for feedback on this. Is that right? They can submit it in writing?
So you can send it to me, and so you basically couldn't have a group email with each other because that would be a serial meeting. So you can send it to me and then your idea, and if you wanted me to send it out to the group, they would reply to me with thoughts, and that would be okay.
Great, Denise. Yes. So I'd really like, if anybody's interested in that, to look out for those emails.
Although we wouldn't be able to, if I were to comment on Commissioner Guerra's chart, then my comments would not be allowed to be seen by others, because that would create communication channel. I would just be able to say to you, I think we should change X or Z or whatever. And I don't think that could come back. Each person would then just make comments to you about her suggested chart, I think, or something.
Right, and then we could compile them or however that would look if this comes back or how it looks moving forward. But it just would not be a reply all situations, so where everyone's having a collaborative conversation via email.
Any other comments?
Hello, thank you for all of your hard work on this document. It's very comprehensive. And I had a question. I know I recently went through some training and preparation for our science adoption in our district. And we were very fortunate to have a content area expert come to our district and talk about the process and walk us through the beginning steps to be able to adequately, evaluate a program. And so I wonder, would this be a place on page 7 in preparation for events, or is this even possible to have county offices provide content area experts that might provide a little training on this first piece of adoption?
We obviously couldn't mandate it, but we could make a suggestion, which is pretty much what this document is suggestions and guidance. So
that was very helpful, I think, in terms of realizing like how in-depth the programs went on standards, or if it was just a light touch surface and if it was, a high quality program or not. Is that something that's possible?
I think that makes sense. I know we included publisher and content developers. A lot of times districts can communicate with those developers to come in as the experts and lay out, in general where the standards are covered and so forth. So I know we highlighted in the document that there could be a back and forth between, the curriculum experts, and whatever you're trying to adopt. But I do think we can put it as a suggestion also. Can you clarify where you felt like that fit in with bringing the content expert? Was it after the initial reviews when they're down to 2, or in the very beginning?
Actually, in the very beginning, we had a team of it was instructional coaches and directors that actually learned the process, so that when you get to the portion where you're working with teachers, you already know the process and then can help the teachers along with also learning the process.
I just wanted to say just a last few comments if I could. So also, thank you very much for all the work that you've done on this very comprehensive document. As has been pointed out, I just want to reiterate, as you all have said, it's based on a long-standing document that has been around for a long time and has withstood the review of that. We've had our March revisions, we've had our today's revisions, you've had suggestions from the public that you've listened to. It's clear. Just reminding that, as I think you mentioned, this is really guidance for local districts and charters and counties, and we're not ensuring anything or we're not mandating anything, because really it's up to them and the team that they put together to do that good job. And I've been part of many adoptions, and sometimes it's been a really great team, and other times it's been, let's just get this done. And unfortunately has not seen many of the very, very important things that our commissioners and others have pointed out. To my perception, you've been very responsive in hearing all the suggestions and in making the revisions, and it seems clear that you're going to continue to make those revisions. So I would just recommend that we move forward with that and not delay this process too long.
I had a quick question on this. So in my previous experience with teachers adopting new instructional materials, a lot of my teachers have used old textbooks and old standards along with the new pilot materials. So I was wondering, does there need to be a way to gauge how much teachers are combining different standards together?
Trying to think about how to answer that correctly and diplomatically. So due to local control laws, CDE can't really mandate which standards are being used, which textbooks are being used, if they're being combined. This is really a document to help schools that want to include or to adopt new instructional materials. Unless you guys can think of a way to do it, I don't think we could say you can't combine materials, you can't combine standards. We would suggest and really like you to use the new stuff, but we can't mandate it.
And just as an additional comment, that's why you see in this document current standards.
Current standards,
I'm gonna
current
stop
frameworks,
there.
current toolkits,
Yes.
All of the most recent state board adopted documents.
Full alignment, and that's why you see phrasing like that to encourage everybody to keep up to to date with the latest available resources.
Any other commissioners?
I just wanted to say thank you. The document is really well structured. I feel like I have led a few adoptions, and it's always a little nerve-wracking, but I'm like, okay, this is something that I feel like you could really move from and work from. Even things as simple as having templates that we can download and modify to fit the needs of our district, I think is really helpful. And so with some of the additions and suggestions that you've heard today, I have no doubt that it's going to come back even stronger, and I'm just really grateful for all of the hard work that I know you're doing. Thank you.
I will say I really like the new introduction, so.
Thank you so much for your feedback. We really appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think my question is around clarity of our process, like what happens next. So we came up with a lot of great suggestions and recommendations to improve upon an already strong document. In terms of the process of the IQC, there was a recommendation from one of our commissioners to take a moment to you just take a moment, and then a recommendation from another commissioner who would like to move this project along. So would like discussion on that.
I guess my question would be, if we held till the next commissioner meeting in November, like how does that push back any of our processes?
Well, that's a great question. So the original plan is to bring this document, include your edits and bring it before the state board at their November meeting. Excuse me. If there's a desire to bring the document back to the IQC for another look-see, then we would do so, and then we wouldn't bring it before the state board in November. Depending on comments received in the November meeting, we may or may not be able to bring the document in time for the January state board meeting. It may get pushed back to the March meeting, just logistically speaking.
I was just also reflecting on Commissioner Guerra's comment a few moments ago about the idea of expertise in the field and how do we solicit that expertise. And as I mentioned, I would advocate for us pausing and just taking a moment, but in that pause, or if we were to decide to take that pause and just slow down a little bit and have another revised version come back to us, I would also love to see an opportunity for a public comment period where we're really able to solicit some of that expertise as we're making that next round of revisions.
So from a logistical standpoint, are we able to capture the recommendations from the commissioners made today and still be able to maybe post for a 30-day public posting and still make it for our November IQC meeting? Is that unreasonable?
So for clarification, is the question on the floor, incorporate the edits received at this meeting, post a clean version of the guidelines for a public comment period for approximately 30 days, would we be able to then bring it back to the IQC at the November meeting? The answer to that logistically would probably be no, considering 30 days would be the whole month of October. And then we would have to post 10 days prior to the November meeting, which occurs November 15th. So this document would be would need to be ready to go by November 5th, 5 days after the possible close of a public comment period. So this, if there is a desire for a 30-day public comment period, we could do so, and we would not be able to bring it before the Instructional Quality Commission until minimum the January meeting.
I have just a question. I know that a lot of districts are now looking at and thinking about math materials because of the new math framework. So I'm just wondering if we were to push it and give it a little bit more time, how that would impact the guidance there for districts and so forth because of the timing. So just a thought. I'm not yeah.
Is there an option to do less than 30-day public comment period, like a 2-week public comment period?
So this document had been posted for 10 days prior to this meeting. So it's already been out in the public for 10 days, and I do know that after this discussion, we'll be hearing from members of the public to provide their feedback. So there's already a 10-day in place. Keep in mind that when this document moves forward to the state board, there will be another 10-day public comment period there prior to that meeting for the state board to collect and consider prior to their meeting. There is nothing in education code or regulations that specifically stipulate a document such as this, how long a public comment period should be, such as a curriculum framework, which, as you know, has the 2 mandated 60-day public comment periods. So the short answer is no. There isn't any specific indication as far as how long a public comment period needs to last. The only thing in there is that prior to an open meeting, it needs to be posted for a minimum of 10 days. You're welcome.
Could I just ask, it seems we've had 2 public comment opportunities for the public to comment, but all the time in between the March meeting and this meeting, the public has had that opportunity to send in their suggestions and comments and revisions as well. So it seems to me like there's been a lot of opportunity, and as you say, there's still going to be additional opportunities when it goes to the state board.
I think the challenge is the version that was presented to us in March was the 2015 version, and this version is significantly different.
I think it always makes me nervous to approve something that I haven't seen. That's my only, like I trust that you guys are going to do great work, but by approving something that I actually haven't seen makes me a little leery, even with the pressure of the timeline. So I just want to say that's what's coming up for me.
Now, if there's a desire, I mean, we can absolutely, as mentioned earlier, collect additional written feedback from individual commissioners directly to Denise, so that there isn't a serial meeting situation. There isn't going to be a 2-way communication there. That comment can be, taken and incorporated into the document, as well as whatever feedback you receive from the field during this 10-day public comment period. That would still give us enough time to be able to prepare the document in time for your November IQC meeting, for you to be able to re-review, take another look at, and say, okay, I feel more confident in the edits that have been applied to this newer version of the document. But that would be without holding like a 30-day public comment period in addition.
Just to clarify, so that means that that document, the revised one, would still be posted 10 days before our November meeting, so people would have an opportunity to comment. Got it.
And that also means that we will have, during that 10 days, time to see it as well. That's how I took it.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm happy with that.
If comments and suggestions are made during the 10-day period, will they be added or revised into the document, or no? There's no longer opportunity for that.
There wouldn't be opportunity to incorporate anything prior. So if we receive public comment before the November meeting, between that November 5th and November 10th, November 5th and November 15th meeting date, we wouldn't be able to modify the document for transparency purposes. You would only see the public comment that was received during that 10-day period, and then the document that was a result of that public comment, not result of, the document that the public comment was about.
However, during our discussion item in November, we could direct staff to incorporate the public comment in a final version.
That is absolutely correct, and it would be very important for the commission to specifically lay out the exact changes that they would like to see made in that document for full transparency.
I just wanted to check in on the workflow of the SBE meeting, because now we're going to look at the document again. Is that going to impact something that we're unaware of right now?
So currently, if we were to look at this document again at the November IQC meeting and then approve it, it is possible that we would be able to put it before the state board in January, but ultimately the state board's agenda is entirely up to that body. And how busy that they can be at the beginning of a calendar year.
Okay, are we ready? All right. Can I have a motion to approve the proposed revised guidance for local instructional materials adoption as amended per our discussion, and to hold a 10-day public comment period?
Commissioner Jarvis, can you state that again?
Can I have a motion to approve the proposed revised guidance for local instructional materials adoptions as amended per our discussion, and to hold a 10-day public comment period to reflect those changes?
For clarification, I think Commissioner Jarvis is adding the 10-day as the 10 days prior to the November meeting per Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act.
So then we wouldn't be voting to approve it today, though, right?
The revisions.
I guess I'm confused if
So
we haven't seen the revisions.
The proposed revisions that were made in our discussion to be captured in and added to the current draft, and then that draft be posted to include those revisions in our discussion in the 10-day public comment period prior to our November meeting.
So we're not approving the guidance, we're approving the revisions.
Revisions.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm still a little confused because I see your point as well. It seems if we are making a motion to approve something, we're approving the document, and it seems the IQC is saying, no, let's wait until the November one. I don't know if we need a motion for our group to then make those recommended revisions. It seems like they're going to do that anyways without this motion. Does that make sense? I don't... To me, it sounds like if we make this motion, we are approving this document with the revisions made. And I agree with our commissioner that I don't think that's what the majority of the body seems to want to do.
So, as a commission, are we comfortable moving forward with the recommendations that that ensued in our discussion and giving them guidance to reflect those in the new document? Thank you. Okay, is there any discussion or public comment?
There is public comment. Caller, you may begin. caller, you may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Benito Aranda-Comer, and I am a policy analyst with the Education Trust West. I am calling to uplift the submission of a coalition letter sent by Californians Together, Education Trust West, Loyola Marymount University's Center for Equity for Education English Learners, and the English Learner Success Forum regarding Item K. Our respective organizations have been collaborating over the past several years with the shared goal of ensuring that LEAs, educators, and families have access to high-quality instructional materials that truly meet the needs of California's diverse student population. It is with this goal in mind that we offer the following comments on the proposed revised guidance for local instructional material adoptions. 1, more time for feedback and review of guidance before approval. 2, include additional resources to ensure materials have strong alignment to English language development standards. 3, strengthen guidance focused on consideration for student groups. And 4, more information regarding the piloting and approval process. Generally, there have been a greater amount of time to provide public comment on these drafts before approval. Similarly, the resources that are outlined must be updated and should have strong alignment to ELD standards. The coalition letter provides several suggestions for updated resources and opportunities for alignment. While the guidance are context agnostic, there should be more robust consideration for marginalized student groups, similar to the language and guidance in the recently approved math framework. I ask the IQC to include the recommendations outlined in the coalition letter and allow staff more time to consider the recommendations before approving this guidance. The Education Trust West is ready and able to be a resource in the process along with our partners. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next caller, you may begin.
Hi, good evening, members of the Instructional Quality Commission. This is Manuel Buenrostro with Californians Together, and I'm calling as well to elevate the coalition letter that was submitted in conjunction with Education Trust West, LMU Center for Equity for English Learners, and the English Learner Success Forum. We fully support the additions in the document to elevate ELD standards and the importance of designated and integrated ELD. We also fully support the recommendation made in today's discussion to include a rating sheet for integrated ELD. Integrated ELD can elevate and improve the rigor of instructional materials for all students, but it's critical for English learners to have access to rigorous coursework and resources that can support their education. Our letter provided a list of additional resources that we hope to be included in the final version to support this alignment. These include the California ELD Standards Integration Document. It's called Integrating the California ELD Standards into K-12 Mathematics and Science Teaching and Learning. It's a document that was created for the California Department of Education by WestEd. There's also great criteria that can be elevated in this document, including the criteria for the review of instructional materials to address the needs of multilingual learners. This was created by California Curriculum Collaborative in partnership with several organizations, including EdReports, EdSolutions, the English Learner Success Forum, and Pivot Learning, now called Unbound Ed. There's also great guidelines for improving materials for multilingual learners that the English Learner Success Forum has created that we hope to be linked and included in this document. As previously mentioned, guidance and additional resources for the review of materials to meet the needs of our highest need students is critical. It's not just including that information in the document, but including additional resources that are open source that can be adapted by local LEAs and supported to meet their needs can be imported in this process. And also in the piloting process, making sure the considerations. Thank you again, and we really appreciate that additional time to be able to provide additional feedback on this important document.
Thank you. Next caller, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Executive Director Torres. My name is Lindsay Tornatori, calling on behalf of the California County Superintendent. We would like to express our deep appreciation to the very highly talented and exceptional Seaford staff for taking the initiative to create a guidance document that will help educational leaders with their instructional materials adoptions. Also, thank you for your inclusion of the adoption toolkits developed by the county offices through the Curricular and Improvement Support Committee, or CISC. The robust discussion and thoughtful recommendations presented today reflect the importance of this guidance document, especially on the heels of AB 1078 and the math framework adoption. We strongly support the motion to open a formal public comment period and to provide another opportunity for the IQC to review the draft prior to it going to the state board. This public comment period will address the question raised by Commissioner Guerrera. How do we engage more experts in the space to provide specific recommendations to strengthen this document? Our county office partners stand by, ready, eager, and excited to engage and be your thought partners to strengthen this document that will be so beneficial for students and schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you. There's no further public comment.
Thank you. The public comment line for this item is now closed. Next item is 1L, individual commissioner reports. This is a standing agenda item where commissioners can give a report on any committees on which they represent the IQC. This is also an opportunity for commissioners to suggest agenda items for future meetings. Would anyone like to speak? Okay. Thank you, commissioners. Well, thank you for being here. This was, we're under time. We're about 30 minutes before our adjourn time, and I would like to say that we'd like to conclude our meeting for the day. The meeting is now adjourned.